Welcome to my RCWarships.com from stem to stern video tour of my Atlanta RC combat model. This is a model of the American light cruiser Atlanta. It was built for radio control warship combat under the International Radio Control rule set. And let's get into this. Again, this is my Atlanta model. This is a light cruiser, 2.5 units, armed with 2 BB cannons, a pump, 2 motors, and a whole bunch of whoop-ass. Well, whoop-ass for a cruiser, that is. As you see, as we go down to starboard side, this model is already battled, and all those little holes are put in there by BBs. The hull's already been patched from his last battle. I don't know how well that'll show, but there's quite a bit of damage was incurred in the bow area. This little guy here is a power cutoff. And here's a starboard baby cannon. This is angled forward and 15 degrees off the center line, as allowed for by the IRC rule set. This section here is magnetically held on and pops off so I can access the cannons where I can adjust the power or the tweak of the cannon, as we call it. It just snaps back in. Coming back here, just some scale details. This is all made of foam so that it is flexible, resistant to damage, also very lightweight. This is a small model for our hobby, and weight is critical. Back here is the business end of the propulsion. She has 2 1.5-inch plastic propellers, and also what we call a fishtail or rudder. This helps with maneuverability of the model. Coming up the port side, again, the port side cannon, and one note is this model is, I'm still running analog radio, and that's the antenna for it. Just haven't moved to 2.4 gigahertz yet. My older analog radios work great, and so I just stuck with it. Now let's pop the top off and look at the interesting stuff on the inside. The model is top is held on by magnetic latches. I build my models with a full removable deck. This way I'm able to open up the hull easier and for maintenance and things like that. Alright, so we'll start with the front underside of the deck. The deck is made out of a 16th-inch fiberglass sheet. It's a bit flexible, so I added these stiffeners in areas. The stiffeners along the bottom, and actually the main stiffener is running underneath the fuselage. Here you can see part of it there. These are just aluminum, 1/4-inch aluminum strips, which add stiffness to the deck. Moving back, there's a magnet bonded to the underside of the deck, which matches up with this cross brace here, and there's a little magnet under here, which matches that. Further back, a little foam piece here, which fits around the power cutoff here to help keep water out. The power cutoff is actually an RCA audio jack, gold plated, which what I'm using as a power cutoff. And in the audio world, these are called grounding plugs for the RCA jacks to help reduce noise, but in my world, it makes a very convenient on-off switch, very durable and high amp. Continuing back on the underside of the deck, we get to the fun part. These are 2 custom-made BB cannons that I built myself. These are actuated by electronics, which we'll get to shortly. And these 2 black items here are the solenoid valves, which switch the 150 psi CO2 to the system. These cannons are made from plumbing fittings, 1/4-inch, for those of you that aren't familiar with our hobby. And these plastic tubes here are the magazines. Each one can hold 50 rounds. And a little innovation that I came up with was I use these push-to-connect fittings here for loading, and also feeds gas to the back and pushes the BBs into the guns. These valves here are what are called, I forget what they're called, but they bolt together and they share a common, they build a common manifold for the supply pressure coming in. So the gas is coming in this tube here, comes down here, and it's not very, you can look on the build log for this model and get better detailing in this area, but it feeds into the solenoids. Solenoids switch to gas. Gas feeds into the guns here. There's a little piston here that moves back and forth, pushes the BB into this up tube here, pushes it up to the breech assembly. Inside the breech assembly there's a little compressed O-ring which stops the BB. Pressure builds up behind the BB and pushes it out the barrel and hopefully into an opponent's warship. At least that's the plan. Alright. Again, there's more details for all this construction under the build log, which will be linked in the text of this article. Starting at the bow of the model, here's the matching BB for the front deck magnet. And further back, we have a 2.5 ounce CO2 bottle, and attached to that is a Battler's Connection lightweight regulator. This reduces the 800 psi CO2, which is the same CO2 we use in paintballs and such, down to 150 psi, which is mandated by the IRC rule set for safety. Further back, this jumbled mess is the electronics. This is a small model, and there's not a lot of room to do a really nice installation of electronics like I like to do on my larger ones. But suffice it to say, it works well. It's sandwiched between these two foam pieces for protection from BB hits. In here we have a battery elimination circuit which reduces the 24 volts from the battery down to the 6 volts or 5 volts that the radio control system uses. There's also a electronic speed control which is controlling the pump. Yes, these models do have bilge pumps. And there's also an electronic speed control which is controlling the main drive motors. And that's all packaged up, and that's further detailed in the build log. A little detail of the power supply manifold, which has the cutout made from the RCA connection. This is on the positive side of the circuit, 24 volts, and then we have four. I use these 2 millimeter gold-plated banana connectors in my builds, which works out really well. And this feeds 24 volts to the various systems. Further back, this is a Lowe's Cobalt 24 volt power tool battery. I think I'm the first one in the hobby to jump to 24 volts in these models. And I found these at Lowe's, and I thought I'd give it a try. And so far it's been working out fantastic. I'm running 24 volts in this model and also in my larger battleship model. This has been opened up, and the electronics inside were coated and waterproofed, and then the battery put back together. Cool feature with these is you have a quick and easy power level meter built into it, which is kind of cool. This model, after an hour's battling, will deplete about half the battery capacity. Further back, we have the two drive motors. These are running the Propeller's direct drive. These are RS555 PH-24 something motors. These are rated for 24 volts, and they are a lower RPM, higher torque than was typically used in the hobby. These are brushed motors. They're not brushless. These are, I don't know, like $4 or $5 each, and they push this model very well. At full power, this model can do 100 feet in 9 seconds, which is, the rule state this model is allowed to only do 100 feet in 21 seconds or 22 seconds. So I have to reduce the power output from the electronic speed control down to about 35% to make speed, as we call it in the hobby. So a lot of power reserve with this setup, and a lot of torque coming off the line. Some features of this is you'll notice the areas that are open on the motor I covered with this green mesh, which is actually as fiberglass drywall tape, and it's glued onto the motors. This keeps the BBs out of the motors, because BBs will come in. Well, sometimes they may get past the internal screening which I'll highlight later, and that's just a little reliability issue. The motors are attached to the direct drive prop shafts by these cool little connectors, which are screwed onto the motors on one end, and then they have a compression collet fitting which attached to the shaft. Direct drive like this without any universal joint between the propeller and the motor is very rare in the hobby. I went through the trouble of getting the alignments perfect. I used to align pumps and stuff and machinery in the Navy, so I figured why not do that here. So what I do is I have full power with no efficiency losses between the motor and the prop because of any universal joints, or dog bones as we also call them in the hobby. The motors snap into, I don't know how well you can see, but I made these aluminum mounts from some tubing which is just a few thousandths smaller in inside diameter than the outside diameter of the motors, and they snap in there. It's a push fit, and they're working out really well. They also work as a heat sink, drawing heat away from the motor and pumping it out to the hull. Further back is the pump. This is the bilge pump for the model. In our hobby, the only defensive nature of these models is the pump. And with the as your boat takes more holes through the thin balsa on the sides, the more water will come in, and this is where your pump, hopefully it's working well and pumps well, will pump water out. So the idea is to put more holes in your opponent's model than their pump can effectively remove. And at that point, the model will sink. And yes, these models do sink. Everything in here is waterproofed. Electronics are waterproofed. And if it does sink, we go out and we like to bring them into close to shore before they sink all the way, so that they're easy to retrieve. But if they don't, and you go swimming and you go get your model, hopefully the lake isn't too deep, and you bring it back, you drain the water out, patch the holes, and you get ready for the next battle. The pump is a little detail there. There's the outlet of it. It's going through this restrictor here. Again, this is well detailed on in the build log. Further back, the prop shafts. It looks pretty empty back here, but this is room for the guns to hit in, to slide into. They're going into the stuffing tubes at this point. Stuffing tube is just a tube with grease packed into it, and it keeps the water from coming into the hull up along the prop shaft. Further back is the steering servo. There's more details of this on the build log, obviously. Fun thing about the steering servo is this top plate here is supporting the shaft of the rudder, but if you take this off, the steering servo will pop right out for maintenance or replacement. Well, that's the from stem to stern video tour of my Atlanta combat model. Hope you enjoy it.